The 5th Asia Business Responsibility Summit saw stalwarts from corporate India come together to address the importance of sustainable development and business responsibility. The Sustainable Development Goals laid out by the United Nations Development Programme are a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for the planet. The event began with a high-powered panel highlighting the importance of responsible business practices, good governance models, and social responsibility, apart from achieving the 17th Sustainable Development Goals. The theme of the summit was Business as a Force for Good and the need for business to achieve these goals for their survival.
These days, businesses are being encouraged to participate in the Sustainable Development Goals. Some of the businesses are getting threatened because the way things are changing, the ecological changes are happening, the future of some of the businesses is not even certain. Therefore, it is in the self-enlightened interest of the businesses that they begin to invest and participate in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. There's a $12 trillion opportunity which is being thrown out as a result of these Sustainable Development Goals. For India, for example, electric mobility, the low-cost housing are the two major areas where there's a huge business opportunity as a result of these Sustainable Development Goals. So these are the outcomes we are expecting. Sensitizing, advocacy, is our focus.
We have our own very, very deep-rooted cultural reflex towards the idea of sustainability. We don't need to learn this from anybody. It is extremely deep-rooted in our own culture, society, and history. And corporate governance, which is the other strand of businesses beginning to think about sustainability, the idea that the doctor needs to heal itself before it actually heals its patients, is again an idea that came to us organically. It was not imposed on us. It was our own failures. And I think you've actually seen India emerge as a genuine leader over the last 5 or 7 years in terms of the sheer systematic institutionalized attention that has been paid to the development of a corporate governance culture.
Sustainability now is it's not business as usual, because if we carry on business as usual, we won't have a planet. So it's very important for us to this generation, to accept the fact that we have to think differently. And for that, sustainability of what we do, consciousness of the sustainability, and for CEOs to actually think through some of the externalities that they have on the economy is very, very critical.
It's really about consciousness, that you are the conscience of the company. The company's got no conscience of its own. It's got no heart, mind, or soul of its own. You are either a conscious leader or you're not. And if you're a conscious leader, your company will become a responsible corporate citizen. And so, ideas, concepts have changed nations. The concept of limited liability changed the way we did business. You look around India, most businesses are conducted through the medium of a company. It was a concept whose time had come. The concept of integrated thinking and doing an integrated report were concepts whose time had come. By 2008, 2009 in this century, we, the international bodies I've spoken about, realized that we were living in a constrained, naturally constrained world, yet increased population, increased demand for product. We had to change the corporate mind. We had to think on an integrated basis and do an integrated report. They were concepts whose time had come. That day at the United Nations, that was vision, and it became actionable by forming the IIRC. And we have today integrated thinking and integrated reporting. IR is vision with action. Integrated thinking is the basis of the business model. As I said, it's the revolutionary immensity of that is changing and being adopted around the world. And we don't have to grope in the dark for all this that I've been talking about. You've got the framework of the IIRC. We have to move Plan A has to succeed because we don't have a planet B. Well, the significance of integrated reporting is also in the thinking, because companies operated during the 20th century in silos and looked at profit without looking at the impact of how the company made its money on two other critical dimensions besides financial, namely society and the environment. So the Sustainable Development Goals are designed for the corporate mind, the collective mind of the board, to change its thinking, to build a business model, or how the company makes its money, which strives to have a positive impact on the economy, society, and the environment, so that holistically you see value creation.
The afternoon session focused on long-term business practices and the important role that the board and the CFO play in steering organizations towards these goals.
I thought I'll come a bit into the Indian ethos. The thought process of creating sustainable business also ingrained in the Indian concept of dharma, or moral well-being in all we do, or doing the right thing. And this manifests itself, in which Gandhiji came with the concept of trusteeship, as championed by him, and who considered the board and the CEO as trustees for the overall common good. And this has again been illustrated by Sir Jamshedji Tata, the grandfather of Ratan, who said, in a free enterprise, and he said this in the 20s, the community is not just another stakeholder in business, but it is in fact the very purpose of its existence. And he felt that the wealth of a business is held in trust for the people and used exclusively for their benefit. Again, in the Indian process, we use the word labh for profit, and there's the word lobh for greed. And I think this distinction is very important. And again, it was Gandhi who said that there's enough for everybody's needs, but not enough for everybody's greed. And it was Peter Drucker who said, profit is the cost of staying in business in future. So I think this distinction of labh and lobh, along with the path of dharma, would give you the Indian ethos of what sustainable development is all about.
If, say, Uber were to be regulated by the Transport Authority, when they actually deliver food, they also have to be regulated under the FDA requirement. You also have the similar issue for us, that if you also are, say, using technology and there is a product liability, who is responsible? Can I then go back and say that, look, this artificial intelligence I used to look at lease agreements or customer contracts, which failed me in my audit, was actually not developed by me but bought from a third party? Or will the requirement be to say that you are responsible as the user of that software to actually take liability? These are issues which are still evolving, because today, for example, if you look at the way the world goes, the simplest example being of, say, medical devices which are implants. They're tested at the time when the implant is put in your body. If there is a software which is used in the implant, it is tested at the time when it is implanted. If there is a software upgrade that is then pushed into your body, at that point in time, who is responsible? If the software provider has a glitch in his software, and God forbid the heart just stops, who is responsible? Is it the person who gave the implant? Or is it the person who provided the software upgrade 2 years or 3 years down the road? Today, the law is still not really dealing with such issues. And this is really where the risk lies for our profession as well, in terms of early adoption of technology.
The third session had another high-powered panel comprising of K.C. Bhargava, Chairman Maruti Udyog, Navneet Munot, Executive Director and CIO, SBI Mutual Fund, Keval Handa, Chairman, Union Bank of India, and Shailesh Haribhakti, Chairman, L&T Finance Holdings. They shared their thoughts on impact investing and sustainability of mobility and finance in the future.
In a country as big as India, and which is still growing in terms of the ability of people to have their own mobility systems, whether it's a car or whether it's a two-wheeler or whether it's even a bicycle, there's a long, long distance to go before we can reach even 25 or 30% of the levels which are prevailing in the developed countries. The need to improve the whole licensing system, traffic enforcement system, traffic management system, these are also requirements for sustainable mobility, because without the correct infrastructure, it's not possible to have sustainable anything. And therefore, sustainable mobility, like sustainable finance, will depend a great deal on having the appropriate infrastructure to support that. Mobility is required because the economy cannot grow and flourish without mobility. But mobility should not be in a manner which will either degrade the environment or which will cause such a burden on the economy in terms of imports and foreign exchange requirements that it becomes non-sustainable.
The final session of the day was the Global Governance and Leadership Forum, where the eminent speakers spoke about the challenges and breakthroughs in global governance.
The theme of this is Challenges of Global Governance, the Collective Governance of the Planet. So, governance depends on these 6 factors mainly, and my personal view is that India is doing extremely well on all these 6 governance indicators, sir. But hearing from you, it will be more credible. First of all, voice and accountability for common man and everyone. Political stability and absence of violence. Government effectiveness. Regulatory quality. Rule of law and control of corruptions. So on these 6 things, we would discuss in this Global Governance and Leadership Forum and hear from the experts.
I was under the impression that I have to speak on a business case for sustainable development goals. When I landed up here, Mr. Chauhan said that I've sent you this WhatsApp with 6 very complex issues, varying from governance to transparency to corruption in India. And these are very complex issues of the country. So let me try and give a broad overview on some of these issues. First of all, my view is that India is growing at about 7.5% per annum. Last quarter, we have grown at about 8.2%. And therefore, one of the key things across all these 6 complex issues which Mr. Chauhan posed is, how does India use technology to leapfrog in many of these areas? And one of the key things that's happened in the last 4 years is, one, that government has focused on making things easy and simple. In the years to come, many of the things, many people are not aware, but public finance, in government, we use the public finance management system. And I'll tell you, every single scheme of the government today, we work on public finance management system, which is totally digitized. I can't release a single paisa of the government till the last beneficiary without it going digitally, online. And therefore, the PFMS system is a totally digital system. And therefore, my belief is that the government has gone 100 steps forward. The public governance in terms of technology and digitization has moved 100 steps forward, but the private sector has not been able to keep pace with government. And therefore, to my mind, bringing in GST, formalizing your economy, ensuring that RERA will ensure that only when you get your payment, only when the house is completed, or ensuring the insolvency code and the NCLT that you don't pay the banks, you lose your businesses. These are very major radical structural reforms towards better governance, towards transparency, and towards ensuring that India becomes corruption free. And therefore, these are major radical transformative steps being taken forward in this country. And to my mind, if India becomes easy and simple, if these structural reforms are well implemented, if India digitizes, it becomes a cashless, paperless economy, which the world has never seen, if the jam trinity is spread across the country, and if these vast number of measures permit, the states and subsequently the municipalities and the panchayats, India will become one of the most efficient, will become one of the most transparent economies in the world.
Good governance provides a competitive advantage in the global marketplace. 2, well-governed companies raise capital widely, easily, and cheaply. Good governance leads to improved employee morale and higher productivity. 4. Well-governed companies last longer. Lastly, it is important to remember that the market is the definitive compliance officer. The increasing power of the capital market to discipline errant management and/or dominant shareholder by denying her access to the capital market is a strong reason to take corporate governance seriously.
Now, peace, Sustainable Development Goal number 16, goes along with the requirements of justice and strong institutions. Peace without justice means suppression. Strong institutions are necessary to implement human rights. Human rights without strong institutions remain rights on paper and not in reality. Now, peace globally has to be maintained, of course, first of all by the United Nations, peace among states. But the United Nations is a weak institution because of the veto power of 5 permanent members. And one great deficiency of the United Nations is that the largest, most populous state in the world, in the future India, is not a permanent member. The number one improvement I can propose for the United Nations is that India will become a permanent member of the Security Council.
We are trying to involve businesses increasingly in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, being fighting poverty, fighting hunger, fighting lack of access to water resources, fighting in favor of a stronger role for women in society, gender issues, and the whole range of goals goes up till peace. Peace inside states, peace among states.
No organization, and I use the generic term rather than company, in India or any other part of the world is immune from 2 greatest risks on planet Earth at the moment. The first great risk is climate change, and the second greatest risk is cybersecurity. So the National Institute for Security and Technology, NIST, has said 5 core functions of effective